Yesterday in my live, I said that I wouldn't be doing a preview and prediction video on this game. I would just be re-uploading the segment that I used yesterday to talk about this game. I'm not going to do that. I changed my mind, actually. Today's video is going to be shorter than the usual preview and prediction videos, but I still want to go through, give an official score prediction, and make a dedicated video to this game. I originally wasn't going to because I honestly didn't think that Penn State had close to any chance to win outside of a miracle. And I will still say that I maintain close to that same mindset. However, it is close to a top 10 game. In actuality, it's a top 12 game. Penn State is in Beaver Stadium, which is a hard place to play, and it's an intriguing matchup. It's a noon game, but it's probably a given that Nittany Nation's going to show up. They're going to be loud. They're going to be angry. James Franklin as a coach, it's hard to trust him to beat the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's why I said in my live yesterday I have greater faith in Mel Tucker to beat Michigan and greater faith in Mark Stoops to beat Tennessee. I'd compare the chances of Penn State beating Ohio State to that of Billy Napier's Florida beating Georgia. Next to 0. It's similar to Michigan State beating Michigan and Kentucky beating Tennessee, but Tennessee and Michigan losing are far more likely, still very unlikely, but I think far more likely to happen than Florida beating Georgia and Penn State beating Ohio State. Just because Michigan State's a rivalry. Tennessee, there's a chance that they could lay low, they could overlook this game and focusing on Georgia. And Georgia could do the same against Florida, but Florida's much inferior to Kentucky. And Penn State, I just don't think Ohio State's going to overlook Penn State. The whiteout effect isn't there. And James Franklin is just one of the worst game day coaches in the country. And Brent Pry was one of his last big-time staff members, and he's away coaching his butt off at Virginia Tech. Without further ado, though, I want to get into this game, and I want to preview it and talk about it with a little bit of a different flavor and with less time than I usually do, but still sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. Ohio State's number 2 in the nation, Penn State's number 13. So it's actually a top 13 matchup, pardon me there. It's noon. If you're an Ohio State and Penn State fan, you get the privilege of having Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt because this is a big noon kickoff game airing on Fox. Ohio State's given a 79.6% chance to win, according to ESPN's FPI, and the Buckeyes are favored by 15 points last time I checked. This depth chart ranking is similar to the one Ohio State had against Iowa. And when I saw that, I'm like, no, looks like copy and pasted, and it's really not, because Penn State's much closer at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and even offensive line. They're closer at every position except for linebacker to Ohio State. And Iowa also has the better defensive backs, in my opinion, or at least the better cohesive secondary than Penn State does. Penn State has the better individual players with, Joey Porter Jr. and their great safeties. And I'd also give the Penn State the edge with special teams because Ohio State's one of the worst teams, special teams-wise in efficiency. Penn State's one of the top 25 or top 30 teams in the nation in special teams efficiency, I do believe. You have C.J. Stroud at quarterback versus Sean Clifford. That is the main area of focus, in my opinion. Can Clifford have a career day? And we'll talk about this more because I think that he is the player to watch. That along with the offensive line. Penn State, if you want to win this game, your offensive line and your quarterback are going to have to play to they're going to have to approach OSU's level of play at those positions. And I would say it's pretty similar with the interior of your defensive line. It's with the defense, trench play, quarterback. I frankly don't think that Penn State has to have tons of success on the ground to win this game, in part because Ohio State's run defense is one of the better run defenses in the nation, so it's unlikely they'll have success. It's probably unlikely that it's a part of their game plan to have success on the ground to beat the Buckeyes. It's also because Ohio State's secondary is a paper tiger, and their cornerbacks are not good. Ohio State's secondary is a paper tiger in part because they faced Wisconsin, Iowa, Notre Dame. Ohio State has not faced any kind of a team that has a good passing attack. Penn State's passing attack, which isn't even great. It's just average, above average, good on good days. This is by far the best passing attack Ohio State's going to be facing, and it's a road environment. So if you're Penn State, play to your strengths at defensive back and tight end, and the quarterback and offensive line rooms, they're going to have to play at a very high level. And defensive line, PJ Mustipher has to be on his game. Those defensive tackles, those linebackers, they're going to have to put on a show. So depth chart wise, Ohio State here, they're favored, and they have a pretty big gap ahead of Penn State. And at the same time, this is somewhat deceiving because Penn State, along with Michigan, are the only teams that by a raw talent standpoint can actually threaten and physically hang around with Ohio State. Penn State and Michigan have their average recruit or their average player is like a high 3-star or 4-star. Ohio State's average player is a high 4-star, probably a high 4-star, honestly. It's very rare to see an average and like the average player be a 5-star. It's very rare, almost unheard of. So Penn State has the advantage compared to most Big Ten teams that they have some of the raw talent to be able to hang around with Ohio State. And you've seen this in the past in James Franklin teams. The defense, trench play, especially on the offensive line, especially in pass block, you can't have Zach Harrison, JT Tuimoloau, and Mike Hall just getting in the backfield and abusing Clifford all day. That will not help Penn State win. And Clifford is going to have to connect with Theo Johnson, Bretton Strange, Mitchell Tinsley, Parker Washington if Penn State wants to, let alone be competitive. More likely than not, if you're an Nittany Lion fan, you're hoping that'll get you a win. Both of these teams are good, though. Penn State had a very bad loss to Michigan, and that's partially because A, they were on the road in the Big House where they never do well, and B, because Michigan is close to Ohio State's caliber this year. Penn State played a team that could have success in the playoff, a team that could win it all, and they're going to be playing another team like that here. The difference is they're hosting Ohio State, and I think that Penn State's defense actually they have a better matchup against Ohio State's offense than they did Michigan's offense, because Ohio State is better at passing the football than Michigan. They're worse at running the football, and they have a slightly worse offensive line. Penn State is a much better team at pass defense than they are run defense, and when they can shut down your run or limit it, you get in trouble. You get in big-time trouble. Just look at the Purdue game where Aiden O'Connell nearly had 60 pass attempts, and it wasn't enough. It really wasn't enough. And Penn State, their defense got exposed. It's still ranked 10th in efficiency, though. They have a better defense by efficiency rankings than Michigan. Now, again, efficiency rankings are efficiency rankings. James Madison at one point had the number 1 defense by efficiency rankings. That didn't mean their defense was better than Georgia's. It just meant that they better utilized the talent and resources they had than Georgia did. You look at Michigan's defense and Penn State's defense, they lost similar amounts of production compared to last year. And Michigan arguably has the better coordinators. Penn State has the better secondary, but Michigan, they have studs at D-line that we didn't know about. Their backups from last year looked like they could have been starters this year. So very, very good D-line that Michigan has. Penn State's D-line not nearly as fortunate. And it is a good D-line, or an above-average D-line, I think. But Michigan's offensive line is just elite. Very elite offensive line the Wolverines had, and that messed up Penn State. I'm saying this to give context and to say that overall Penn State's defense is probably an overlooked part of their team, even though I don't think they have an elite defense like they typically did in the Brent Pry era. Penn State's the 15th most talented team compared to Ohio State's 3rd. Both are nearly top 10 in the FPI. Penn State's number 11, very close to being 10. Ohio State's 1st. The Buckeyes are also first in efficiency. The Lions are 10th in efficiency. Their offense has also been creeping up in efficiency metrics. After the Minnesota game, it was 37th, which I think was the first time it cracked the top 40. And their special teams is also top 40. They're 39th in efficiency. Players to watch in this game, Mayan Williams. He's the best running back Ohio State has. He's healthy. And Penn State's rush defense, they went from being 5th in the country, and then after the Michigan game, they were one of the worst defensive rush defense teams statistically in the country. Mayan Williams is the closest to a Michigan running back that you have. Like Blake Corum, he's small, low center of gravity, big, beefy guy, and he has a power element to him and a shifty element like Corum has. Travion Henderson is a better receiver than the both of them, than Corum and Williams, in my opinion. He doesn't have that power element, though. And he doesn't have the same, I don't think he has the same awareness to make something out of nothing that these two do. Corum, against Indiana, had 4 guys on top of him, still broke loose for like a 50-yard TD. Williams can just pound it through. Williams is older, he has more experience, and he has also had his plays where he's made something out of like, he should have been tackled right then and there, but instead he gained 10 or 15 extra yards. Henderson's the best in open space, but against a defense like Penn State's, you're not going to get a lot of like plain opportunities where there's a wide open hole for Henderson to run in. And for that, Williams is going to be the better running back to play here more often than not. So look for him if Ohio State is going to come out of the gate and just dominate this game like what Michigan did, except an on-the-road edition. I think that Mayan Williams will have a big day. If Penn State wants to have any kind of success, Clifford is going to have to repeat the same performance he had on Minnesota. He's going to have to. And there's a good chance that he will, given Ohio State's corner situation. I don't trust Denzel Burke or Cam Brown against Mitchell Tinsley or Parker Washington. I don't. I honestly don't. Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers, I trust them against Theo Johnson, Brenton Strange. But Ohio State's corners, they've had issues all year. The safeties, linebackers, D-tackles, defensive ends, edge linebackers, they've all been great. The corners are Ohio State's weakness. Mitchell Tinsley's one of the better wide receivers in the country. Parker Washington's an NFL wide receiver. If Clifford can make on-the-dot throws, if he can put it in the breadbasket, watch for Penn State to move up and down the field in the passing attack. My prediction overall, I do think that Ohio State's going to win, and I do think they're going to cover. I was tempted after, I talked about the game last night, and I'm thinking to myself today and a little bit last night about this game more and more. I watched Josh Pate do a preview and prediction on this game. He thinks Ohio State's going to win and Penn State will cover. And there's a lot of good thought to that because James Franklin, again, he's 6-2 against the spread against Ohio State. And it's a home game for the Nittany Lions, and this Penn State team is better than last year's team. Here's where the difference is, though. Last year, Penn State had a great defense. It was one of the best defenses in the country. Their offense was just an atrocity on the field. This Penn State team is a better offense. They have a better special teams unit. Their secondary is probably similar. Here is the problem, though. They also have more mental toughness than they did last year. That I will give them to, and that has to do more with James Franklin and the strength and conditioning coach than anyone else. The issue is Penn State has a Manny Diaz defense, and they lost so much, not just in secondary, which they've done a good job at replacing, but they lost Arnold Ebiketie, and they haven't had that same pass rush presence, and they also lost their linebackers, and they haven't had the same presence there. And I think that Ohio State will beat Penn State in a balanced fashion. They'll test their secondary through the air. And because of the wide receivers Ohio State has and because of C.J. Stroud, they will make some big plays through the air. And because of Ohio State's offensive line, because of guys like Paris Johnson Jr., because of guys like, because Luke Weipler, and really because of Ryan Day, who runs the offense, Ohio State will score, I think north of 35 at minimum, more likely than not north of 40, which is where I got the 41. Penn State's defense will be good enough to play a bend but don't break game for a quarter or two, but I think that much like the Michigan game, Ohio State is just going to dominate on the ground, and that'll open up opportunities in the pass realm. This will not be the typical Penn State-Ohio State game. Ohio State will win clearly in a dominant fashion, and I think that the game will be over at some point in the third quarter, and it will be noticeably over. Noles' defense will clamp Penn State's rushing attack. I think that Ohio State could clamp Penn State's rushing attack and Penn State could still win, but it doesn't help nonetheless that Penn State's rush attack will likely be reduced to nothing. Clifford will have to have a career day. Manny Diaz's defense is going to have to do something that a Manny Diaz defense hasn't done, which is shut down an elite offense. And I think for Penn State, this will be a repeat of the Michigan game. I think Penn State's offense will have better success in total yards and points scored against Ohio State's defense, if I'm being honest. And I think more of that has to do with the home field advantage than anything else, because Ohio State's defense is similar to Michigan's. It's slightly worse, but it's pretty close. Similar to Michigan's offense to Ohio State's offense. The difference is the defenses and the offenses of Michigan and Ohio State, they have pretty close to opposite strengths and weaknesses, if I am being honest. Ohio State being stronger in defending the run and being weaker in defending the pass. Michigan being better at, defending the pass than defending the run. And for the offense, it's the opposite. Michigan runs the ball better. Ohio State passes the ball better. For Penn State, they're not at the caliber that these two teams are, let alone at the caliber of the Buckeyes, because I think the Buckeyes are the nation's best team. And for that, I have a score of 41 Ohio State, 24 Penn State. And that's this video. That's my prediction. If you like this video, whether you're a Penn State fan or a Buckeye fan, please hit that subscribe button. Comment your thoughts on this video, on this shorter prediction video down below. Please hit that notification bell so you can get notified and not miss my live streams and also not miss any new uploads that I have. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.